100%. I had to write that down as this situation or femtech or reproductive rights accessibility affects 100% of the next generation. And we are only receiving 2% funding. I
Yeah.
mean, that needs to be shout about from rooftops, really, as far as our resources, where we are, economics, everything. Welcome, everybody. We have Sastya Wardani. She is an experienced venture builder with a vision to revolutionize women's healthcare, armed with a passion for women's empowerment and a belief that every woman deserves to be able to make plans for their life. And Sastya co-founded a startup dedicated to assisting women in managing their fertility and reproductive healthcare called Plans. And Plans is developing an AI-powered mobile tracker app with hyper-personalized suggestions that connect women to healthcare services and providers, with issues from maternal care to trying to conceive and infertility. With a focus on accessibility, Plans solutions have reached 15 cities in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. Through the vision that Sastya brings with Plans, she aims to ensure that women everywhere have access to comprehensive healthcare solutions. Wow, that is incredible. Welcome, Sastya.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Thank you. I'm so privileged and lucky, and it's remarkable the work that you're doing, because particularly most of our audience are based in India and parts of Singapore and Western markets, and where we have contraception that is widely available. But that's obviously not the case in your country or countries that you're supporting as well. So I wonder if you could share the landscape of what family planning looks like in at least your country, and then what inspired you.
Okay, so we are mainly focused on Indonesian market, but because our goal is to expand the access, we had to kind of like look outside of Indonesia as well, because the access has been very limited. It's a combinations between like the country that adopts Eastern value and at the same times more religious value as well, and probably like also a combinations with like a lot of other things too. For context, in Indonesia, contraceptive is not easily accessible for unmarried women, and it's even illegal for unmarried women to actually get contraceptive. As in, like, it's illegal for the doctor to give to unmarried women. So if they get caught or like they're known to give to unmarried women without any medical indications, then they can go to jail, which is not going to be good for anybody, including the patient. When we talk about the professional healthcare available in Indonesia, overall is not so much. Our doctor to population ratio is only 0.84 to
Mm.
1,000. And if you look
Wow.
closer into like OBGYN, that's even smaller. There's only around 5,000 for 140 million of women in Indonesia. Right?
Mm.
So that's why, even though in terms of our business, we also look and work together with clinic and hospitals outside of Indonesia, our main focus right now is still providing this access to Indonesian women. We just see a little bit of extra opportunity there because we already have the partnership with a few other countries. Then we are able to open it to Southeast Asian market as well.
Mm. Oh wow. Okay. So why you? How did, I mean, that's a very big question, but yeah, why you, why now, and how? Because if this has been a long-term problem, I would love to find out how you went about this.
I think it started from my own like personal fear. I grew up with a thought that, just like probably any other Indonesian woman, I grew up with a thought that I'm gonna get married fast, quite young, 24, right after I graduated from uni. But then when I graduated from uni, I realized there's still a lot of things that I want to do, but I'm also scared that my time's gonna be up very soon without me knowing. So that's when I started looking into all of this information on what I can do personally for my body and what is good, just to buy me more time. And through that experience, for me, it was very, very hard. And I come from a family who's like half is like a scientist, doctors, and stuff. And why is it even so hard for me? And I also spent half of my life being overseas in like outside of Indonesia. But the whole experience was also different because I'm so used to not getting this kind of care. So I'm also used to not actually reaching out to get the care. And turns out it's not only happening for me, but also happens to a lot of people around me. We're like questioning each other, like, what is going on? And so that's where like the idea came in. I feel like in a world that is somehow already connected, it's still something that's very hard for us to get. And so how do we make this very complicated informations and knowledge that is very, very useful for us, 50% of the populations, easier? And that's how I came to kind of like build this.
Wow. You said something really interesting there. It was that like time's up. I feel like time's running out because I'm based in London. I know you do your PhD in London, so you spend a lot of time in Singapore, London. So you experience both duality went into you. You would experience, I can do whatever I want and I can have control of my body and all these rights and I can get pregnant in my 40s type things. That's on the opposite scale. And it's really interesting as when you said that my time is up, because I think that's really changing the landscape for the Eastern and global South cultures of where now you have access to education and you have access to, well, more free education and control over your life more so. So I wonder how are you seeing this change in the age group of millennials and Gen and access to technology? And also, I know that Indonesia is really becoming a hub for technology, and there's a lot of investment into entrepreneurship
out there is huge and it's ready to be explored. I see a lot of, I think we call it zillennials as well right nowadays, like the younger millennials up to like the Gen Z. They're looking not only to do so-called the traditional route, which is like educations, then immediately into marriage, but a longer journey in between that. But unfortunately, what I see is also because our world is changing with like the food that we eat, populations, how everything externally changes as well. With the longer journey that they want to take, comes also with a lot more problems that they're experiencing. And one of the thing that got really like a lot of attention in Indonesia when one of the government representatives say that, oh, everybody in Indonesia should just be getting married and have kids. And then the I think like people were angry about that, saying that, oh, but what about work? You know, we need to work. It's expensive and this and that and this and that. Well, I think it's also happening everywhere, honestly. But one thing that they forgot to give to us is this right to the educations. I believe right to especially the right to educations of like our own body, because um, now like as we are transitioning into that, a lot of people, which I think statistically say around 85% of us women don't even know what's going on with our body. So we have to go through the transitions of having like a longer journey to marriage, but then at the same time living those age poorly, also due to the fact that there's like a lot of other external things that are changing. Like we see a lot more rising cases in PCOS. We see a lot more rising cases with endometriosis, and it is becoming kind of like common to see young women below 30 are going through early menopause. And yeah, that's
I know you told me about this before, so I've already gasped at this. That just astounds me. And so, are you able to see the data of why that is happening from the maybe environment and diets, or what? Because we're not seeing that quite so much over here. We are certainly seeing it a lot younger, but 30 years old is quite alarming to me.
yes. And unfortunately, I mean that's really happening when we talk to our clinic and hospital partner, they always say it, oh, our youngest patients now getting younger and younger. I think 4 years ago, their youngest was 1997. Like the youngest patients were born in 1997. And back then I was already like, so young? But then now it's getting even more patients who was born after 2000 already experiencing that. However, it is a little bit like, it's also unfortunate that we don't have very specific data. We do see the trend, but there's uh, nobody yet like kind of like collecting all of this information. We do have our own through like our app. We do get an insight of it, but we have not been able to verify it purely because we don't work with clinic in that sense yet. And at the same times, doctors, I think scientists are also trying to figure out what is wrong. There's a lot of reasons that could add on to that. The biggest reason could be genetic, and the second biggest reason is predicted is through the hormonal imbalances. Every
Right.
month, hormonal imbalances, which kind of like affect a lot of women as well without us knowing, because the symptoms could be so small, and we probably don't even know if some of the symptoms that we're experiencing are of that issue. So it's we the reason could be more into like looking out like externally what is actually going on and what changes on one by one with each body.
Yeah, I think perhaps even that genetic piece of how the environment is certainly changing, and also the diet is changing a lot, and then as well having babies later as well could be. It's really interesting, I guess, for you to see that data. And so the challenges that you're solving in Indonesia and Thailand and so forth about empowering women's bodies, how is that information being translated to everybody with the app? So if somebody has obviously heard about the app, what can they do? How can they access different healthcare providers? How are those next steps?
Right now, we mainly work with clinics and hospitals
Mm-hmm.
by allowing them to use our app as a patient management care. So every patients that they come to like their clinic or hospitals would be able to download our app, use it with like the full feature, so that they can get the same care at home as when they were inside the consultation room. So our app includes a symptom tracker, like to make sure that your reproductive health are in optimum level, and you don't experience hormonal imbalances when you don't even realize it. And at the same times, throughout the treatment, very specific treatment, for example, like IVF, egg freezing, and a few other treatments, you also get information and care at home as if you have a nurse and doctors with you at home. And all of that are also assisted through our reminder features, including we call it like daily tasks from nutrition, diet, mental health, and everything that would actually affect your body. And if in any case that we could see there's like a potential risk of a certain issue, we can suggest you directly to any doctors or hospitals nearest to you, or with a very specific experience and expertise in dealing with that.
And are you able to assist with women accessing birth control as well? Or
Yeah,
because of the legalities, is that causing certain issues?
it actually depends on the conditions, because what happens
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
if users don't come from clinics or hospitals, they're going through something, they input it on the app, and then through the app there's an indications of some problem that they might have, then we connect them to the doctors, and if the doctor says that that's actually what they need, they can also get it. So we're assisting doctors to see and validate whether it's a problem or not. This also depends on where the app is being used. In Indonesia, if there's no problem, we might not be able to do that. But if they're using it in other countries outside Indonesia, there's a possibilities of them doing that, depending on local law.
Mm. And are you able to build a relationship with like local policies, or I'm not sure if you have reproductive rights lobbying and things like that, maybe not in Indonesia?
There are ways that we are trying to do, trying to as well like lobby, but as much as we see progress, there's still a lot of things that we
Mm.
can actually do. So in that case, we are going more into educating women, following like any legals and law or any regulations that affect them, and how do we actually still maintain it and manage our health in the optimal way. That is why,
Mm.
for example, like in Indonesia, with the limitations of accessing birth control pill, our app can actually be used on regulating hormones in a natural way instead of using the artificial one. Or, for example, we also trying to conceive and process like an period. We are trying to emphasize the importance of fertility awareness method as well through the app, so that they can navigate through which days are they're fertile, which days they're not.
So it's really changing that conversation and education piece from birth control to hormonal wellness to
Yeah.
reproductive long-term health. That's certainly a new place, a new conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, and what are you noticing the parallels between other countries, or what do you need from, you spend time in London and you spend time in Singapore. So what do you need from women globally, I suppose, because we have a global audience. We're in this together. As you say, women are facing freedoms in one country, and then, it's an old narrative. But since we have access to all of this.
I think just as simple as making the conversations about women health a norm, it's
Mm.
already creating a lot of change in like our world. Because before this, before we actually talk about it, everything about women's health is a medical term. It's complicated. It's very scientific, which I mean it should be, but we can also talk about it in like our day-to-day basis and make it more accessible for us, make it more a topic that's happening everywhere. And in that sense that we can also translate whatever research or educations or any new knowledge in a way that would work for people outside the city or even the country. And from I believe like from that, then we can amplify the message as well as all this new knowledge and resources that we want to get as well. Because my own experience, I had a very interesting conversations with someone I met in London, and we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about birth control pill just like usual, like what I do every day. And then I brought in not only my experience in Indonesia, and then what are all the informations that we get when we talk about birth control pill with the doctors. And then this lady was also talking to me about experience in the UK. And then suddenly the conversations kind of continue into the effect of using birth control. And then somehow along the conversations, then we got into the commonalities of the problems for people who have been using birth control pill, for example. So just that kind of conversations can actually help us a lot in understanding what to like. For me as representing Indonesia, then we know like, birth control pill, if not being used correctly or under like doctors uh, supervision, it might turns out bad, just like how they experience in the UK. But then at the same time, from people like women in the UK could also understand like, oh, in Indonesia, because we don't use it, there's like actually other ways to regulate uh, menstruations or like hormones and stuff. So it's kind of like um, the kind of conversations that we need to see happening, which definitely have to start from understanding our own body as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think we're all experiencing the same thing. We all have the same pains. We're all having the same problems. I mean, every country experience is different, and there's
Yeah.
limitations certainly there, but we need to unite together. And I don't think we realize the power in community and connection and just hearing each other's stories, because there's always commonalities, isn't there? So Plans is a femtech firm, and we've spoken a little bit about femtech here, but what are your challenges that you're noticing in a woman and in Indonesia or Southeast Asia in female technology versus if you were in fintech, for example?
Definitely, this could be very long.
Okay,
But
yeah. Sorry, I
you
know.
know,
It's a big one.
that's because this is a very interesting one. For context, I've been in the femtech industry in Indonesia first and then Southeast Asia since 2019. So it's gonna be my 6th year being very involved in like women's health companies, I would say. When I first started, there was barely any conversations about femtech. There was not even a term of femtech like being known in Southeast Asia. And there was not really a demand through even the investment or corporates in femtech. But there are already problems. One thing about Indonesia as a growing country, we see problems directly through our children. So all the movement comes through our children. On my own experience jumping into femtech was also because going through this movement of helping pregnant women to go through pregnancy smoothly, being able to give birth to a healthy baby. And one thing is that they are getting enough nutrition. See, that is a problem with C. Now, fast forward to a few years later, suddenly femtech becoming even more kind of like a global trend that spills over to Southeast Asia. A lot more people, a lot more companies, a lot more investors are looking into femtech companies as well. But again, this femtech still comes as an evolution from the baby. So we still find it hard to make people understand that the effect is not only for a very niche people. Instead, it can actually affect like not only 50% of the population, but literally 100% of the next generation. Went to London for Femtech 2 years ago. I realized, at least in the UK, Femtech is already something that is more mature. The kind of conversations we have in the UK already more advanced than Southeast Asia. 2 years ago, we were still talking about how to get the right education. And then when I go to the UK, we already talk about preserving of like ovaries, for example. And 4 years ago, maybe that was the time that we started talking about egg freezing for unmarried women. When I went to the UK 2 years ago, they already talk about something else, right? Like reproduction in space, like a few other like probably components that can help with the reproduction as well. These discrepancies for me personally is also kind of interesting because I feel like looking outside of Southeast Asia is like looking out into the futures. We might not there yet, but that could be something that we could easily do or like replicate and bring back to Southeast Asia. So it's becoming easier for us to learn. It's also becoming easier for us to see the trend on what will happen actually in Southeast Asia.
That's really great because the pathway is always the same. And again, it's that connection, that collaboration too, because we would have made mistakes here in the UK and then you can model those. But but what do you think we need more of then in female-led innovation within this space?
We like, I would say we do need more support for sure. Yeah, not only we do need like a lot more funding. Definitely, we need to up that number from 2% to at least make it a double digit.
2%.
Yes.
2%. I had to write that down as this situation or femtech or reproductive rights accessibility affects 100% of the next generation. And we are only receiving 2% funding. I mean, that needs to be shout about from the rooftops, really, as far as our resources, where we are, economics, everything.
I always say if anyone find it hard to justify or see what funding in women's health could actually change the world in a way, I always say look at all the things in the consumer area that women are the market and look how big it is. We look at beauty, we look at fashion, we look at like a lot of other things. If anyone ever thought about like how big this female health market could be, and I always tell them to look at every other market that the targets are women. We could talk about beauty, we could talk about fashion, and look how much impact economically that it could give to the world. But imagine if now we are really targeting the woman's life itself, how big then could it be?
Mm, mm, mm. I think we don't realize that, but I'm really fascinated about that 2% of funding. So what do you need? What would you like to see? Where would you like to see plans in 5 years' time?
We want to take over Southeast Asia
Of
as
course.
our goal. Yeah, and our goal is to be the biggest and the number one female health app in Southeast Asia.
Mhm.
We aim to serve very specifically and very like personal for Southeast Asian women. That's our main goal right now.
Mm, mm, mm. And how can our listeners within the global community better advocate for better choices for our community? I guess it's what we've spoken about is connecting, having these conversations about our health, reproductive care.
First and foremost, I always encourage everyone to uh, get to know their body better. Female health, hormonal health, reproductive health is not only something that you need to know because you want to have babies, but like different than the men, our reproductive health is also the one driving everything else within our body from head to toe. So by understanding ourselves first, like don't think about like anyone else. By understanding ourselves first, then we get to open this kind of like door to more information we need. And when the moment a lot more people actually reaching out, uh, then we can even look into more things that we can do collectively together, from finding a cure or maybe a new change in lifestyle that might be better for not only one person but like as a community and a society. But first we need to look at ourselves and take care of our own self first.
That's such a key, beautiful message because maybe as women, and I am certainly in Eastern culture, it's giving. The matriarch. But all we need to do is come home and listen and take care of ourselves too and understand every part of our bodies because it does
Yeah,
change in every couple of years, or well, it changes obviously daily, but
yeah,
there is huge steps of how that changes certainly every year, and it's so important too. And we're all going through the same things, and if we
yeah.
just share and we can do it better together. Is there any final words that you'd like to share about what you're experiencing, going through, plans, what you'd like our listeners to know more of? So, what are you
Yeah.
seeing then? What are you studying in UCL, which is like one of the best global institutions for health? And what things are you solving there?
Through my PhD, we're still looking into ways to open the access for women, specifically in women's health. One of the reason why I was interested and finally decided on actually going to UCL, because I see even more interest in research on female health, like within the university. So there are a lot of other things, including a very specific program for women. It's very interesting to see how even universities looking at the trend of women's health and
Mm.
how maybe like for them yes a business, but they know how the potential it has to come with a course or like a specific program.
Because I don't think a lot of people know that the female body wasn't actually recognized in science until the 90s, so only
Yes,
30 years ago.
yes.
And
So
so,
I always say this: the year female bodies are recognized and the year where it is by law have to include female in clinical trials is the year I was born.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's
So
remarkable.
any yeah. So anyone who's older than me, even just by a year, I'm so sorry you were not recognized the year before.
Your body wasn't recognized in clinical trials. Yes, so what does that mean for pharmaceutical medicine up until now with painkillers? Because we are noticing that ibuprofen or paracetamol that is taken for pain actually is causing these gut issues, which then causes hormonal imbalance, right?
Yes. If we go back to the basic, they always say vital signs, there are only four, right? Like we
Mm,
have heart, but for women, there are five.
mm,
So
mm,
before that, we collectively only recognize that these four things as well. So when we say, oh, you're not healthy or you're healthy, it's only based on these four. But these
mm,
four, for women, change the way that the fifth one works, right? Hormones such as estrogen and progesterone has always been known to the uh, female sex hormones that affects only like the menstrual health, but which actually is not. It's also affects. So
mm,
that's why nowadays, the more we actually understand and acknowledge the changes, we kind of see some things might give us a whole totally different effect. Same like maybe the vaccines that we get, or maybe the antibiotic that we are prescribed, or maybe like a few other things as well.
mm. And then also how the microbiome or the vaginal microbiome plays into that piece as well, which is a whole other subject. That's really interesting. And then I suppose, how is the landscape of technology then changing in women's health education and the science that you're noticing, or what solutions are we looking towards for the future?
Okay. We finally realized that ovaries is the fastest aging tissues in the
Mm,
whole body, and only women has ovaries. But then because we have ovaries which also age faster, a few other organs also age faster alongside with the ovaries. And I think that breakthrough, we started to look into a very specific solution for different organs in women, starting from brain even until like everything in the body. Now a lot more solutions are available out there for that very specific little thing. Mm. In my point of view, it's never too much because there's always a lot of things in a woman's body itself that could be optimized, because then we only find out about it. It's just very interesting to see how then everything works together.
mm, mm. In harmony and symbiosis. Well, that's how all of our systems work. It's a connection of systems, and what each has a knock-on effect that connects the other
Yeah,
too. And then I also want to caveat to our audience who might freak out that their ovaries are aging so fast, and as you rightly said, there is so much that we can do and support, and that's the whole reason that we're here for preventative care. We have apps like Plans, so you can empower yourself. You are powered to your health. You're never a victim of your health, and there's always solutions that you can do, and you can get pregnant into your 40s as long as we're doing all of these things to support
yeah.
your system.
Yeah, but one thing that is also very interesting, because we already look into this, like what I said, as new solutions, it has a different effect than women. And somehow those who are able to have like a connection on what another actually makes women easier. What I mean is, for example, we always talk about collagen for beauty, for anti-aging, for our skin. But collagen is also one of the best thing for our ovaries health, egg health, for when we are trying to conceive. Just like by having all of this is actually make us easier. And I think that is also why we have to even like look kind of like microscopically to into what is actually going on with us, because once we kind of like put the puzzle pieces together, and it's just going to make women easier.
Mm. From you just saying that, I bet every woman paused that to go and get some collagen for their ovaries. So I just want to confirm:
Sure.
is it literally just like having, collagen ingesting, and that supports your overall system? Because ingesting it isn't just going there; it's going directly through all of your tissues and everything like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Sastya. I know we've shared a lot, and I'm really excited about your journey.
Mhm. Oh,
Where can our listeners find you and support you and connect or reach out and continue the conversation or support you in any way possible?
yeah. So I'm available. Can be contacted through LinkedIn.
Mhm.
My name on LinkedIn is Sastya Wardani, and I'm also available on X with the same name, Sastya Wardani. And through there, we can talk a little bit more, or even share insight on what is going on, like with female health, not only in Southeast Asia but also all around the world.
Mm. Can I just ask you about that note? Is for women or people wanting to contribute to Femtech, is X really the platform where that is happening, the conversation or resources are shared?
It's one of the a platform that is kind of growing, because I also got into X again because there's a lot of invitations coming from X to have this kind of conversations, and uh, now there's a lot more kind of also overspill from TikTok. So, but yeah,
That makes
but
sense.
that's just one thing that's a little bit harder for me because then I have to make videos.
Yeah, agree. It gets a bit too much. What the cortisol's going up and then affecting hormones. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.